Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. This is Reservations, and I'm Rain Whalen.
And I'm Bubble Bass.
Oh, did SpongeBob forget the pickles?
Nah, man, SpongeBob never forgets the pickles, man. It was all a trick and illusion. Anyway.
I love the joke of when they realize the pickles are under his tongue, and someone's like, "And there's my car keys." Like it's
he's hiding everything under his tongue.
Yeah, because it's like I didn't forget the pickles. He put them under his tongue, and then Mr. Krabs like, "And they're the pickles from last time," and then just some random fish woman, "And there are my car keys," and he's like, "And there's my ride."
Jesus. I didn't think you'd remember that much about that episode. Good job,
dude. Bubble Bass is the greatest SpongeBob villain ever.
Wow.
He's we were talking about it off mic. He's the Thanos of the SpongeBob universe. You know what's even crazier? I'm pretty sure I've showed you that guy, Binging with Babish on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
He recreated Bubble Bass's order from like a later episode where Bubble Bass like orders like this insane burger that's technically like 12 patties, and it's like this.
Oh my god!
Hopefully the camera's seeing me, but it's like this tall, and he made like a makeshift stand to stand it all up, and it kept like falling, so he had to angle it so it wouldn't fall over.
Oh my god!
It's gross, but also kind of cool.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll have to watch that.
But yeah, I'll send it like.
That'd be great.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Jeremy, it's been cold, buddy.
It's cold. Yeah. It's cold.
I don't think it would be that bad if it wasn't for the wind. Like,
the wind. The wind, much like Bryan Adams, cuts like a knife, bro. Because like it's spicy, that wind. And so last night Haley and I went outside because we wanted to know what 11 degrees felt like, and it hurt almost,
dude. So. Ashley and I had to take the dogs out last night, and I don't know if you knew this, but when you're on your weather app, at least on your iPhone, you can scroll down a little bit, and it shows you what it feels like. Last night, even though it was 12 degrees, it said feels like 0.
Oof.
And I was like, how about we just let the dogs poop inside? It's fine.
Just like lock them in the bathroom, put them in the tub for the night. You know what I mean? Like that's too cold, man.
And she was like, no, we need to take them out. And it was, listen, if we have any listeners in Minnesota, I don't know how you do it. That was awful.
If we have listeners in Minnesota or anywhere, that would be amazing. So,
Jeremy doesn't care that you've survived the cold. He's just glad you're listening.
Honestly, like that's a big deal. You know what I mean? So, like, big ups to anyone who's listening right now. So, Kale sent me a video. It's the guy, I forgot his name. I apologize. He's British. He was on Midnight Mass, and most recently he was in Fall House of Usher.
The guy who plays the sheriff in Midnight Mass.
Yes.
Leo.
I forgot his name. I apologize. He's awesome, but it's just a video of him eating scrambled eggs, and he goes, "Big ups to scrambled eggs. These are really." He's just shouting out scrambled eggs. I thought that was great. So big ups to anyone who's
from Minnesota.
Yeah, or who's ever listening, you know. Thanks.
Yeah. Dude, low-key actually would love if we had listeners in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Be like how's everyone so nice down there? I guess because it's on the border of Canada, maybe. So
do you think that maybe they're not all nice, and that it's just like, like we don't all wear boots and ride horses. You know what I mean? Like I think it might be one of those things.
That's true. And I guess my other question to the people from Minnesota is, did Jason Segel portray Minnesotans correctly in How I Met Your Mother?
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on from all this randomness.
Yeah.
So Jeremy, are you excited for this movie?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I was stoked when you announced it. I was stoked when we were watching it. I was doing a little drinking, but I remember what happened. And
yeah, I feel like we have a monumental task ahead of us, more so than some of the other movies of previous seasons. In case you forgot, before I go on, in case you forgot,
don't know how to read.
We are discussing the 2008 film The Dark Knight. Honestly, it's insane that this movie came out the same time as Iron Man.
Yeah.
While
Iron
the
Man
Marvel
came out first, and then
the MCU was starting while Christopher Nolan was like, what if I just made like the best movie ever? I don't care that it's a comic book movie. What if I just made the best movie ever? And Marvel was like, damn it.
Yeah. I remember when I went to go see Iron Man, that was really awesome. I had never heard of the character before, if you can believe that. I wasn't really into that kind of stuff, and so my buddy Jason, it was his favorite character, and I was like, "That's a weird favorite to have, but let's go," And
Yeah.
we went. It was awesome. Blew me away. It was crazy. It was so good. And then The Dark Knight came out, and then I just forgot about Iron Man. And I was like, "Who cares?"
Yeah, it's insane that I would say the only other superhero movie that's in the public conscious besides the first Iron Man film, like The Dark Knight, is Spider-Man 2.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good comparison.
Sequels that trump the first movie, man. I mean,
Yeah.
Batman Begins is fantastic. The Dark Knight is better.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 1 is great. Spider-Man 2 is better.
Yeah. Now, I will say that, where I do agree with you, I would say that unfortunately, like the only reason they're so good is because of the first one. So it's like you can't discount them as much.
Oh no.
Because,
Yeah.
Like Batman Begins did so much heavy lifting so that we can relax and not have to worry about who are these people. We're just gonna go, here you go.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Here's what they're up to.
Christopher Nolan puts in my name is Bruce Wayne, and this is what I've been up to.
Yeah.
But before we keep going on, I think we should let everyone know that this episode is going to be a little bit different this season than some of the other previous episodes. Because you texted me something, and I agree. If we did just do our normal format of synopsis and then discussing the film, the things we liked about it, things we didn't, the technicality of everything, honestly, one would be kind of redundant. There's so many videos and podcasts out there that have done that. And two, honestly, it would be kind of doing a disservice to how insanely good this movie is. So, we are more so going to be talking about the cultural impact of this movie.
Yeah, I mean, we'll touch on some stuff of the obviously of like what makes the movie so good and like what all that stuff. But yeah, its lasting power, its stamp on the culture, mostly Heath Ledger, and what Christopher Nolan gave us with this, right? So yeah, I mean, it's less so let's discuss, let's go beat by beat, let's go scene by scene. We're not going to do that as much. if at all, this time, just
Right.
because it's just been done, and it's one of those things that's weird because, like, if you look at the IMDb trivia, it takes you a few seconds if you go as fast as you can to hit the bottom of the trivia, you know?
Yeah.
Um, which is crazy, right? I mean, it's just so much. It's so full of information. And like people have been dissecting, analyzing, going over this film. I know I've seen this movie probably 10 or 15 times. I mean,
Uh,
minimum.
I would agree. I wasn't going to tell you this, but you know what? I'm just going to tell you because this will prove our point. I started to rewatch this movie for this episode, and I didn't have a chance to finish it, but it's okay.
Mhm.
I've seen it enough times where I remember beat
Yeah,
for
you've
beat
seen it 100
what
times. Right.
happens.
Like
Yeah.
it's so rewatchable. And even this time I threw it on and I was like, "Oh man, this is really good." You know, like I fully expected me to just be like, "All right, it's going to be on. I'm going to be, paying attention," but it's like it's nothing special. I've seen it before, and I just found myself going, "Huh, that was cool." Like like getting
What?
really invested again
Yeah.
in the story. So,
Well, and not to throw anyone off who likes our format, we'll give them the briefest of synopsis, and then we'll get into this. Uh, so The Dark Knight, I believe, in terms of world building, I think this is like 2 years after the events of the Batman Begins,
I would say
and
less because
essentially,
his mansion is still being worked on. So I would say less.
uh, you know what? I meant to look it up, and I didn't.
Oh, well,
So give me 2 whole seconds. Shut up.
unbelievable. Talk to me like that.
Oh
The
my
only reason I think that
god.
is because I feel like it would be built in like 2 years. You know what I mean? Rebuilt and restructured.
It's uh a year ago.
A year. Okay, so it's been a year.
It's only been a
That
year.
makes
So a year since the events of Batman Begins, and Batman's just doing his thing. Working with the police, trying to take down the mob. But where Batman Begins was more about Bruce Wayne figuring out what he wants to do. This one is more about who can we really trust in this new
sense.
hierarchy that Batman has introduced with the cops and the lawyers. So on the one hand, we have the cops and lawyers. We have Jim Gordon, who's gone from, I think he was detective in the first one. Now he's a lieutenant. We have the new DA of Harvey Dent, played awesomely by Aaron Eckhart. Sorry, everyone. And there's this level of trust because Gordon already trusts Batman, but Harvey Dent's like, well, I don't trust him, and I don't trust you, but we need to work together. And then on the other hand, we have the criminals, who the lower level criminals are running scared of Batman, but the mob isn't backing down. Enter the Joker, played beautifully and deservedly Oscar-winning performance by Heath Ledger, which we will for sure probably spend 8 hours talking
Yeah,
about.
at least half the episode.
Yeah, who decides to disrupt this system because he sees where it can be flawed, and he sees where it can be um, uh, uh, um, not vulnerable, but it can be manipulated essentially, and prove his point of chaos reigns supreme, and that he doesn't care about money, he doesn't care about any of this. He just wants, as Alfred kind of says, he just wants the world to burn, and he doesn't care how it works. I'm yada yada overing a lot of stuff because we're going to get into it, but I mean that's technically the Dark Knight. I mean it all culminates. I mean I mean, yeah, I know I just cut it short, but I mean, it all culminates. It all culminates in two separate battles: a battle between Batman and the Joker, and then Batman versus the turned Harvey Dent, now Two-Face, ending with one of the coolest endings ever in any comic book movie I think I've ever seen, of him riding off into, not necessarily sunset because he is the Dark Knight.
Oh my
That's
God.
just the name of the movie.
Jesus Christ in heaven.
But it's just so good, the ending. But that's the Dark Knight.
Sure.
So Jeremy, where would you like to begin, since we're not...
Let's talk about what sets this movie apart. Why is this movie, this one specifically, the one people reference when it's like, it's not just a comic book movie, it's a great movie, right?
Right.
Why? Right? So a lot of it has to do, I think, with the story in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
The story is very grounded in reality. It's not fantastical. There's no... and of course the Nolan trilogy really doubles down on it needs to be able to happen in real life, or like, or what are we doing,
Yeah.
right? Matt Reeves will quadruple down on it in the Batman, right? With his whole with the Robert Pattinson Batman, but with this one, it's more motivations with the characters, what's driving everybody, right? The Joker's is so interesting because with Batman and the Joker, they're both fighting for what the Joker refers to as the soul of Gotham, right?
Mm-hmm.
Batman wants to save Gotham City, right? Eventually, he doesn't want to have to do this at all. He wants, that's why he's, watching Harvey Dent so closely, to make sure he can be trusted. Because if what he's saying is true, and if what he is doing can stay the course, and if he can achieve his goals that he has set out, then Gotham City will be fine, right? He doesn't need Batman.
Mm-hmm.
The Joker, on the other hand, is showing people that anyone can be an animal, anyone can do terrible things when put under the right circumstances, right? And let chaos ensue, right? So there's that dichotomy between the two of them, which is fascinating. Also, I didn't notice it at first, like the first few times I watched it, but there's a lot of similarities, again, where Matt Reeves is going to quadruple down on this. There's some similarities with Seven, in the way that the plot and Joker's methodology sort of manifests itself, like giving like a ticking clock to Batman to reveal himself. Otherwise, people are going to start dying until you start doing that, right? That sort of 7S. Getting himself arrested on purpose is very 7-esque, right? So that's pretty cool. I like that this go around. And I mean, it's silly not to mention that it's just the performances, right? It's Heath Ledger's performance. I'm going to remind everyone a few times throughout this episode that he was 27 years old when he played the Joker. Okay,
which is insane, because the performance ages him up. It makes him
27.
Yeah, I always forget that. I thought he was at least in his late 30s.
Oh, of course. Of course you would. It's such a nuanced and it just fully formed character and performance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why we're gravitated to it so much, is that he put in all the time and all the work, and that's just all it takes, right? It's like I saw a video the other day. This is a really stupid comparison, but it speaks to our admiration of how much time something takes, and how much practice something would take, or how much devotion it would take, right? there is a musical act who you may know. Her name is Lindsay Sterling. Okay, she plays the violin.
Yeah.
Apparently, she gets a lot of comments saying that she's fake playing the violin while she's dancing and doing all of her acrobatics or whatever. And it's like, no, she just practices. You know, it's not unachievable. It's not impossible. You just are underappreciating the amount of time and amount of work it takes to do that, right? And so I think when we see a performance that Heath Ledger gives, it's just we're so in awe of it because we just don't understand how much time and how much of himself he put into it, right? Ignoring the fact that it did not have anything to do with his death, it just, coincidentally.
But, the other thing is too, to the kind of maybe double down on the point you're making, is we do know how much time and how much work he did put into the role.
Yeah.
Because I had a feeling we were going to get there. Maybe not this soon, but it's all right.
Well,
is the fact that, he did die shortly after this film was completed.
Mm-hmm.
He was already working on a film with our boy Terry Gilliam, The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, which I've seen. It's fine. You watch it for Heath Ledger, and the fact that Jude Law, Colin Farrell, and Johnny Depp all sacrificed their salaries so they could finish the movie for Heath.
Mm-hmm.
Video for another day. I'm gonna get off topic, so I'm not gonna talk about that.
Sure.
But yeah, there was this sort of urban legend, I guess, of, well, that role killed Heath Ledger. And although it's been confirmed that yes, he did lock himself in a hotel room and isolate himself, and he wrote all the dark thoughts he was having in a diary, and yes, he was taking, was it sleeping pills or non-sleeping pills?
I don't know. I assume sleeping pills because it would be hard to sleep if you're doing that all the time.
Yeah. Yes, there are all these red flags, but it's, the role didn't kill him necessarily.
I think because the character is mysterious, people want the role to be equally mysterious. I think Jared Leto fell too far into that he wanted. I think he manufactured that experience for himself, which is silly.
Well, and this kind of goes back to, I think, an argument we've talked about on the show before, of the whole idea of method acting, which, Jared's version of method acting is pretentious, in my opinion.
I would agree.
The fact that, to prepare for his role for Blade Runner 2049, since his character is supposed to be blind, he wore blackout contacts so he knew what it was like.
It's so unnecessary.
And Denis Villeneuve was like, it was kind of like watching, I don't remember what he said, but he was like, it was kind of odd, but
he's so
I
nice.
I feel like Denis, wouldn't have said like, hey, Jared, you don't have to do that.
It's such a French Canadian response.
Yeah.
He's a little odd,
What would you have done if I said Jared Leto actually blinded himself?
I would have believed you 100%.
And it's because,
technically he did.
Yeah. Which, it's, but then with Heath's version of method acting, I feel like Heath was still there underneath all of that, because I found an old interview of Aaron Eckhart talking about the hospital scene when the Joker and Harvey Dent actually kind of meet each other. And apparently they rehearsed it a few times, because I think Chris wanted it to be a little bit more, to flow a little bit more naturally and go a certain way. And Aaron was talking about how Jared was constantly in character. No, Heath was constantly in character. People referred to him as the Joker on set.
Interesting.
And organically they came up with what we eventually saw in the movie.
Mhm.
And apparently once this scene was shot and they left set and went back to their trailers, apparently Heath came up behind him and he said, "Now that's acting." And so, like, I feel like even with Heath being method, he didn't fully lose himself into
No,
the
because
role.
once it was done, and he goes, okay, you know.
Yeah.
I think if you were going to go that route, I think that's, I guess, the best outcome you can get is to do
Yeah.
that. Um, but yeah,
Well,
I
I mean,
mean,
it's like Daniel Day-Lewis, you know.
yeah.
Anyway, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say, there are things that Heath Ledger did that are just, he really did, you know, take on this performance, and he did, throw his entire self into it. Where, um, I watched a video today where it was comparing the script to the scene, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he added so much, especially in the physical moments of,
Mm-hmm.
um, he's always touching something, you know, moving in a certain way. He's in the fundraiser dinner party. He's just supposed to be walking around, but he later started picking stuff up and eating stuff and drinking things, and touching people, and like that wasn't in there at all. So, um,
Yeah.
he added so much into every scene. Um, and again, it's urban legend at this point. I read it somewhere that Michael Caine was supposed to have lines um, during that fundraiser scene and just didn't say them because he was so uh, shocked at what he was saying in Heath's performance, which might be true, might not be true. I don't know. It makes for a cool story.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I mean,
Especially if they didn't
and
interact with him that much, then they would have no idea what to expect, and so it really was genuine reactions to him being there.
and again, like you said, it is urban legend. Like, yes, there is a lot of proof that we knew that's been released to the public about what Heath did to prepare for the role, but there is so much we still don't know about, you know, what was he like in the scenes with Christian, and like did him and Christian, talk afterwards, and with Maggie Gyllenhaal, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's you're right. There is this sort of urban legend surrounding it. And I think you're right with what you said earlier about the character of the Joker is mysterious, and so people want mystery surrounding that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the people just want, and I get it because like that would be cool if like the role were also just super mysterious, and to play this character is such a daunting task, and so and it takes so much of you. But it's just like anything else is. Barry Keoghan's not going nuts out there. uh, Jack Nicholson was nuts before he played the Joker, so I mean that's who cares?
Yeah.
It's. And by the way, that's another thing that we can discuss is going from Jack Nicholson, which was the last thing anyone ever saw of the Joker on the
Mm-hmm.
big screen. Now, if you were fans of the animated series, you had Mark Hamill um,
Yeah.
as a interim placeholder, but up until then, you didn't. You just had Nicholson and you had Hamill. That was it. And to say that people loved Nicholson's performance as the Joker is underplaying it so much because before really um the Dark Knight trilogy, that people were like, that's who the Joker is. He's Jack Nicholson. I don't even, you know what I mean? Like, why would we even try again, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so you had that on top of, whatever other pressure I'm sure he was under. But
Well, I was gonna have us transition to this, and I'm so glad you did it, which is, you know, a lot of the backlash that Heath got when it was announced that he was taking on this role. Because yeah, people knew who he was, but he was sort of referred to as a teen heartthrob. 10 things I hate about you.
I'm guilty of this because when they announced that it was Heath Ledger as the Joker, I immediately said 10 things I hate about you. I was like, that's crazy.
A Knight's Tale.
I'm completely guilty of this because, and even Brokeback Mountain at the time, and I was like, really? Okay. I mean, I don't know about that, but which is so silly now in retrospect. We still do it. We still do this now.
Yeah.
I can't think of an example right now, but I'm sure that if you give me one, I'll be like, yes, I was also skeptical.
Well, and do you think it comes with kind of what you were just saying with, in everyone's mind, the Joker was Jack Nicholson through and through.
Yes, I think maybe like, especially of a certain age, I think if you were to have asked your mom back then, Mickey would have been like, gross, it's Jack Nicholson or no one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
And which I understand. But yeah, when Heath Ledger was announced, I remember that. I remember that being a big deal. I remember people being skeptical, myself included, because I was excited for a new version of this character and a new version of the Joker, but I was like, I don't know if you got the right guy,
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw the teaser trailer, which was just the bat symbol and voiceover, and voice clips of what had been done so far.
Yeah.
And heard the voice, and I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. What got me the most excited I had ever been to see a movie in my life up until that point was the teaser poster with the frosted glass, with Heath behind it, writing "Why So Serious" in blood, right? I saw that. I was completely sold. I didn't care anymore. I was like, they nailed it. They got the right guy. Who cares? This movie's going to rip. It's going to be so good, right? And I was right.
Yeah. And personally, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned this at some point, maybe in our Batman and Batman Returns episode. Shout out to that episode last season. Heath's Joker, and I think the reason why I love Heath's Joker, besides his performance, besides the writing, besides everything we've already been talking about at this point, is the version of the Joker he's playing, which is kind of closer to hang on.
Fine.
The Killing Joke version of the Joker. Very, not necessarily sadistic, but very singularly focused on one goal, and he's going to do that goal. And the whole, essentially, we kind of get a version of the "you're just one bad day away from me" monologue in the film, but that's what kind of sold me. I was like, this is, Jack Nicholson was definitely more of the clown prince of crime version of the Joker, a little silly.
For sure.
Yeah, a little silly, but his goal is to rule the underworld of Gotham. But Heath is more of the, which of course they say it in the film, he's the anarchist Joker. He doesn't care. Men, women, children, who cares? I'll kill them all.
Yeah, because again, he's like, the way that this version of the Joker is he's more of a mental patient that would be in Arkham Asylum, right? However, he's not disorganized at all. He says out loud he is, but he isn't. He was able to not only plan a bank heist to perfection, He also planned on people turning on each other throughout the heist. He also planned, and you can see him look at his watch and go, "I need to move right here," with the bus hitting the side of the bank. So he's not disorganized. He's not as chaotic and all over the place as he seems to be. He does have goals. He does have things he wants to prove to people, right? I think he sees Batman as they're one and the same, right? I think he truly believes that. He just thinks that if I show Batman, if I can turn his strengths into weaknesses, that he will see, and I'll break him just like I'm breaking everybody else. And he's so close to, because there are moments where he's showing Batman that, well, Bruce, I don't even know what to call him, but he's showing, well, I guess Bruce, really, because he's the person underneath the whole thing. He's showing Bruce that he's not as high and mighty as he pretends to be, because he will sacrifice the greater good of Gotham to save Rachel, right? He'll sacrifice the greater good of Gotham, of the people of Gotham, for his selfish purposes and his selfish reasons. And I think I would love to see what 3 would have given us, what Rises would have given us with Heath if he had survived, to see if he would have kept poking at that a little bit more, because it's so interesting to see two people that are so close in who they are, but they're just off by just enough to make one good and one evil, right?
Yeah. And in case anyone didn't know, the Joker was supposed to come back in The Dark Knight Rises, but with Heath's passing, Christopher Nolan thankfully wanted to respect that, and so he reworked the script to Bane and Talia al Ghul.
However, speaking of that, one of the things I absolutely love about this trilogy is similar to why I love the show Oz. Okay, it was HBO, the prison show. I'm sure I've talked about it here before. Someone can be the main character of the episode, okay? It's all about them. And then in the next episode, they're in the background in one scene, okay?
Okay.
And then 3 episodes later, they're a main character again, right? There's a main storyline in that episode about them, right? And it'll just rotate like that, right? It's a reminder that you're never, that people are there always, all the time. Just because they're not important right now doesn't mean they're not still there, because it's prison, right?
Right.
And again, it's only really impressive to me because some of you may be thinking, well, duh, of course. But logistically, within making a show, that's a lot harder, because you still, they're actors and you still have to pay them to be there. It would be cheaper to not have them there at all, right? But what I love about Christopher Nolan's universe and this Gotham City is that fucking Cillian Murphy is going to still be there, and that if you just watched this one, you're like, what is he, a nobody? What is going on? You know what I mean? It's
Why is he in this
fact,
for 2 minutes?
Yeah, in fact, no, he's not a nobody. You should see the first one where he's the main antagonist, And again, his cameo in the third one is perfection.
Well, I'm sure you've seen the GQ interview where he talks about that, where after he did Batman. Oh, so he talks about after he did Batman Begins, he was like, okay, great. And, this was fun. Really appreciate it. And then Chris calls him and was like, hey, you want to be in the next one? Just like for a little bit. And he was like, sure. Okay. And then he called him again and he was like, there's no way you figured out how to get Crane in this movie. And he was like, actually,
it's super easy,
barely an inconvenience.
Exactly. We'll just have you be a judge in this ruthless
this dystopian
dystopian courtroom. It's like, done.
Okay, so shifting view from the Joker for a second.
Sure.
I think the other reason why this film, I think lives the way it does is kind of with what you were already saying with its realism. I think that's one of the things about this trilogy that I love so much, which is that Christopher Nolan was like, no, like I'm not gonna make this too fantastical. I'm not going to, there's not going to be a sky beam that Batman has to stop, or, and there still is also CGI, but very little. Everything's practical, and Chris was like, we're gonna, if this were to really happen, how would it work? And I think that's another reason why it's remembered the way it is, because it's so grounded. And again, like we teased last week, we have Tim Burton to thank for that. If you want more of that, listen to that episode. But if Tim had not decided to make his first two Batman movies as grounded as possible, with the asterisks, let's forget about the penguins with missiles strapped to their backs. But if he hadn't chosen
it was a darker take. It was more Frank Miller, but we're still using, bat planes, and we're still using, right? Yeah, and penguins with missiles strapped to them.
Yeah. If you forget that stuff for a second, I mean, the only thing you have to compare to that is the Adam West 60s Batman, which was campy and essentially the comic books of the time brought to life. And so if Tim hadn't done that, I don't think Chris Nolan would have even thought of this. And two, I don't think it wouldn't be as impactful, considering it is so realistic. Then, of course, like you already said, Matt Reeves' Batman cranks that up to 11 and is like, I'm going to make this so realistic, this could happen.
Yeah, well, and that's why I still appreciate about this trilogy is the Batsuit doesn't look silly to me yet. It's real. It's we're in reality, but like, like Crane is still putting on this crazy mask to freak people out while, he does his thing. And, this guy is wearing makeup and he's going around the city. This guy's wearing a breathing apparatus and he's sort of like a otherworldly human size. And that's sort of weird, right? With Reeves, that whole thing, that makes the Batsuit look insane. And like no wonder people are like, Gordon, you've lost your mind. Don't let this lunatic in here, right? Which you also
Jeffrey
need,
Wright.
Yeah, I mean, because you do like need that sort of that perspective of, oh, I kind of get where these cops are coming from because that's silly, right? Sort of losing it, but yeah, I think what also, I think so. Sorry, Roger Ebert. Roger Ebert loved this movie. Okay, gave it a perfect 4 out of 4. Like he's like, this is amazing, right? He gave a similar review a few years before with The Mask of the Phantasm. Okay, at the time, he said this is the best Batman movie in years. Okay, I don't care that it's animated. I don't care that it's technically for children. This is a great Batman movie, right? So I also think that the animated series and Mask of the Phantasm has a lot of influence as well. Also trickles from Burton, right?
Mm-hmm.
Burton started all of this, but of course, then we get this, domino effect. What this movie brings, specifically, even not so much in the first one, is it's bringing these ethical dilemmas that Bruce is having to deal with, like when he decided to rescue Rachel and said that was an ethical dilemma. That was something that he had to quickly think about, but he went the wrong direction. He just got the wrong address, right? And with the sonar phones, that's an ethical dilemma. That's doing something illegal and immoral for the greater good. He's still thinking he is doing the greater good for Gotham. Whether or not you believe that is up to you. I think that it was a necessary temporary evil for him to track down the Joker. Okay?
I agree. Yeah, because, I mean, had he not done that, he probably would have never found the Joker, because somehow this guy with clown makeup can stay under the radar.
Right. And then, of course, you have in the climax, this gigantic ethical dilemma, which is which boat deserves to live more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's let each boat decide. This is, of course, one of his last stitch efforts to show Gotham their true colors and to show that anybody with enough pressure can be made into someone like a moralless animal, an immoral animal, I should say, because that other word wasn't real. But yeah, and so like we're dealing with a lot of ethics here in this film that doesn't really exist in the first one, and kind of trickles over into the third one a little bit. But I think that's also a main staple of why this film has such lasting power and why it's so much better than the other two on either side.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I mean, again, I like all three of Chris Nolan's trilogy.
So do I.
Rises, I could take it or leave it.
It's all about Hardy for me, man. Listen, Rises is so good just for Tom Hardy, man. And that voice, forget it. It's so good.
But this one, yeah, man. And what's interesting about the Joker's his whole thing of to show who people really are underneath it all. And Batman proves him wrong in that moment of like you thought you were going to see the worst, but when neither boat destroy one another, the Joker cheats and pulls out a detonator that'll detonate both. So it's like, then what was the point? What was the point of this experiment?
Right.
Like, if you're really an agent of chaos, your experiment failed. Time to move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Which I think is another part of what you're saying with all the moral dilemmas in this film, which makes it so good that our main villain, doesn't even believe in what he's preaching about. Is he I was trying to make a point here and I kind of lost the thread, but
I always thought that was what he was going to do anyway at midnight but he just assumed you're right that he was wrong in how people would act in that situation, because he was assuming they were going to do it anyway, and so he didn't have to worry about it. But he was always going to blow up both. Both were going to go, or one had to go at least, because if one goes, they have to live with the decision they made, and then his point has been proven.
Right. Yeah. And man, this movie is just so, I mean, I'm pretty sure we've talked about it already, but like, this movie's got so many layers to it. It's insane. And at the end of the day, every scene with Heath Ledger and everything that the Joker does in this film is it's S tier, man. It's like and here's the other thing too. I didn't want to come back to the Joker just yet. But everyone really is on the top of their game. Christian Bale leading the way, Gary Oldman, Maggie Gyllenhaal, recast from Rachel Holmes, which honestly, No offense to Rachel, if she's listening.
It's Katie Holmes, by the way.
Oh, Katie. Yeah, she's for sure not listening now.
Nope.
Katie. No offense to Katie, but Maggie was so much better for the role of
You think?
Rachel. I agree. I really do.
Huh.
I mean, they fridged her, but that's to be expected in most comic book movies, where the love interest gets killed off to inspire or move the plot along for the hero.
Yeah, she really was just used for plot devices, right? I don't think Rachel's her own three-dimensional character in this film. She was a little bit more in the first one.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, so we've been talking about one villain the whole movie. Let's talk about the villain that does prove the Joker right, which is Aaron Eckhart's Harvey Dent, which the Joker does break him with that hospital scene, because the whole movie, and again, this goes back to everything else we've been talking about, the moral dilemma, Harvey being Gotham's White Knight, and the successor that Bruce definitely has in mind to lead the charge against the criminal scum of Gotham, who the movie expertly sets up is unbreakable, with his quote unquote lucky coin that's just a misprinted coin with heads on both sides. That this guy is, optimistic that he is what Gotham needs. And the Joker kind of knew what to do to break him. Which was just explain to him that, as he puts it, that the schemers scheme and I just do.
Yeah.
And essentially to tell Harvey, let the chaos in just a little bit and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think because he knew. So, all right. So he knew Batman, Bruce Wayne, was going to go after Rachel, right? And he knew he'd get there first, right?
Yeah.
And so he gave him Dent's address, so he would be right. So he'd be rescued. And because he knew that if they get Dent, then Dent would lose Rachel. Therefore, he's weakened. Now, did he expect the facial damage? I don't think so.
Yeah,
couldn't hurt though. So, but you're right. I mean that he knows that he's in a weakened state, and so then he exploited that, and
exploited. That was the word I was looking for earlier.
It made him vengeful. It made him out for revenge for Rachel, and doing it the wrong way.
Yeah, well, and it also goes back to his coin. Now his coin is damaged on one side, which also lets him know that Rachel didn't make it.
Right.
But now he's just like everyone else, because now he has a coin that offers a 50-50 chance.
Right. Right.
And that's another thing about this film that for me personally, I always gravitate to, because that alone, the fact that, again, the film sets it up that there's no way that Dent can be corrupted and broken, and oh yeah, we have this little scene, but he's desperate, with our favorite character actor, David Dastmalchian, which this was his first role, from what I understand.
Interesting.
But he's Dent threatens him, but it's because he's desperate, because he wants to catch the Joker and he wants this to stop. And so we get a little bit of that, but then he's back to being the White Knight, and then we just watch him get utterly stripped down in a matter of minutes. And he and what I love too is that the film shows us what he's been up to, but Batman has been so focused on the Joker that he hasn't really been seeing everything else that's been going on in the background.
Right. Exactly.
But and that's, I think, another reason for me why I always come back to this movie. Is that it's, again, I was trying to think of something else to say, but pretty much what you were saying about the morality of this film. And I think that's why it's so good. Because I think,
well, you're right. Because I'm glad you bring up morality, because Batman, Bruce Wayne, has his own moral code. One of them is no killing, right? So, like, at the beginning, he gets really upset at those guys for, dressing up like him and bringing guns to the place, because that's not cool. It's not what he does. He brings people to justice with some broken bones and a broken face, but they're alive, right? So, but, and again, the Joker knows this, because he could have easily hit him with the motorcycle, in the middle of that street. But he knew he wouldn't do that. And so now he can exploit that as well. Right? And and at the end, it ends up that he ends up killing Dent, whether on purpose or by accident, we don't know. But Batman ends up killing someone, right, at the end.
Well, and again, what you're talking about for the greater good, it was to save Gordon's son. So it was either, do I take down Dent, who seems like he's beyond saving, or do I let Dent kill this little kid? But you're right, the Joker, and I told myself, I was like, we're definitely going to talk about Heath Ledger's performance in the Joker. I just didn't expect this much, but even with that interrogation scene, like, the Joker already knows, like, you can hit me all you want, I know you're not going to kill me.
Right.
Like, this is pointless because I've got you right where I want you.
Yeah.
And that's a testament to Christopher Nolan and his brother who wrote the script together. And it's just,
and it's not really taken from any specific comic book, if I'm not mistaken, because I thought it was an interesting choice to have Harvey Dent there, create this character of Two-Face, and then he's gone, right? Whereas in the comics, Two-Face is in there for a while, to my understanding. At least, the only reference I have is the animated series, but he's in there for quite a while.
Yeah, I believe most of the big plot points in the trilogy aren't really based that much on comics. I mean, obviously he's gonna make some references to them, but like, I'm trying to think of a good. I know your wife's next to you, so
I have a good one.
Which one?
I don't remember his full name, but Deathstroke is in the third one. They show like who he is, like, really, he's one of the main. Wilson? Yes, Slade. Thank you. They have like his credentials up at some point. He's one of the main henchmen for Bane, and it said something Wilson, aka Slade, or something, and you're like, oh, that's Slade. Well, oh, that's Deathstroke, right?
Well, see, I was gonna say, unlike Marvel, specifically Captain America: Civil War, the Nolan movies don't really take one specific comic. They're like, yeah, we're gonna adapt this. Or I could have kept it in Batman. The Batman is technically, because I explained this to you after we saw the movie, the Batman is technically an adaptation of the Long Halloween comic book arc, just tweaked a little bit.
I see.
But
I see.
but
Which
yeah,
I've seen.
I think
I saw the animated special of that. That's pretty good.
I have not.
Oh, it's not bad. Well, at
Shocking.
least to my, you know.
Well, I know it's a two-part movie,
It
which
is,
is
yeah.
insane. But I think that's another reason why so many people gravitate to these movies. That yes, we know who Batman is. Yes, we know who the Joker is, Harvey Dent. We know who these characters are, but we're seeing them in a way that is in itself a bit original, and it's not based off any plot lines or stories that maybe comic book nerds have read and know by heart. Because if it is, then good job on Chris for really hiding it pretty well for
yeah, he doesn't
16 years.
I didn't look into like their process of making it or what they did or anything like that. To look at them, I assumed they've never read a comic book before.
I mean,
because they don't seem like the type. Chris, especially, Chris Nolan doesn't seem like he's done that before. Which brings me to my point that to think about this trilogy as a Christopher Nolan trilogy, looking at what's come after, right? It seems like if you were just to look at, which I know some of these overlap with the trilogy, but like The Prestige, Inception, Dunkirk, Interstellar, Tenet, Oppenheimer, like to look at those, you wouldn't say, I think he'd be really good at a Batman movie.
Yeah.
Set those aside.
Yeah.
No, because that doesn't make any sense. But he takes this idea of Batman and these ideas of, the Joker and the idea of Harvey Dent, and let's make him as realistic as possible. Let's put them in situations that would really happen. Let's give them real stakes. Let's give, these morally ambiguous character arcs, and it's really fascinating and it's really interesting. I do also find it fascinating that he did movies in between these. Like he did The Prestige before The Dark Knight, and then he did Inception before The Dark Knight Rises, which is crazy to me. That he didn't just do it all at one time.
Well, I mean, and it kind of, I think we talked about it at some point, but it really kind of started his whole big partnership with Warner Brothers,
Yeah.
And because I feel like they weren't telling him no during that time. Like,
here's what's interesting about it, because when you think of someone is doing a trilogy, okay, you think they're just going to be back to back, like this is all their focus is. But to think about it, like I'm gonna do Batman Begins. Cool, we're gonna do another one, but I had this idea to adapt this novel about these magicians. Let's do that,
Yeah.
And then we're gonna do The Dark Knight. Awesome. But I have this idea with my brother, and we're really thinking about this dream thing and this this dream heist. Let's do that. I really like this guy we worked with, Tom Hardy. Why don't we make him a villain in the last one?
Yeah.
If I had been online a lot, or if I had been more focused on these things, it would have driven me crazy that he was doing movies in between the trilogy. It would be insane.
Yeah. Because I mean, a little tease for next season. It's not like what Peter Jackson did, where he's like, all right, 3 movies,
all at once.
Here we go. All at once. And I think again, I think that's another reason why this movie works so well. And this is no way in anything to do with Peter Jackson. I think doing movies in between gave Chris and his brother sort of like a creative edge. Like, all right, we did Batman Begins. All right, now we'll do The Prestige. Oh, you know what? We did something interesting with The Prestige. Let's kind of maybe sprinkle that over here with this next Batman movie, But I think you're right. That it is insane that he was like, all right, did a Batman movie. All right, let's do this movie now.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna go back to Batman. All right, let's do this one now. And
that seems insane, I guess now, but in retrospect. But maybe at the time it didn't seem so weird because I wasn't mad about it because I knew who Christopher Nolan was and I knew he had been doing these Batman movies. So it's like I wasn't pissed that he was taking time to do a movie in between. In fact, I was like, dude, I remember the first time I saw the trailer for The Prestige. It was at a Buffalo Wild Wings. I was with my parents and it was at Buffalo Wild Wings. We were waiting for our waitress, which is what you do at a Buffalo Wild Wings. You wait for your waitress or your waiter for hours. And so you're just watching the TVs around you. And The Prestige popped up and I go, what is that? How can I see it immediately? And so it's like you make good movies in between. It doesn't matter because they're all good,
Yeah.
And of course, Inception. Yeah. I was thrilled when Inception came out. Right. I saw it. It imploded my mind. I was so excited about that movie. I wasn't even thinking about the next Dark Knight movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, who cares?
Well, and to your point, I love that Chris didn't want to overstay his welcome. He had this idea. I'm assuming it was conceptualized immediately as a trilogy, but then he was like, well, once I'm done, I'm done. Like, no more.
And you wonder how much of it was planned, because you're right, because if you're studying this after the fact and you have all three of them and you're starting to look at similarities, starting to look at patterns, right? The one you're going to come across the most is the theme for each one, which is fear, chaos, and pain, right? And these are the main themes for each movie. Okay. And you're like, did they plan that out beforehand? Or are people just making this up as we go along? You know what I mean? Like, did Chris Nolan sit down and say, this one we're going to focus on fear, this one we're going to focus chaos, this one we're going to focus pain? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know. Well, did Jonathan Nolan have something to do with all three?
I know for sure he wrote the Dark Knight.
He did this one for sure. That I know.
Yeah, with Chris.
Jonathan Nolan, who would eventually go off to create Westworld, which is amazing. He's done other stuff also, but the first season of Westworld is one of the greatest first seasons of television since True Detective.
He wrote The Dark Knight Rises as well.
Okay.
He's an uncredited writer on Batman Begins. So he had a hand in all three.
That's so interesting.
Well, and Chris left his stamp on Batman, so much so that when Zack Snyder did Batman v Superman, Warner was like, "Can you oversee this?" And he was like, "I mean, I guess, sure, I'll be a producer." Like,
yeah,
I guess.
I did see his name on it when I saw it. I did see Batman v Superman in theaters. It's
as did I.
It's a regret that I have. I did not enjoy it, but I saw his name on it. I go, really? Like, because it doesn't feel like it's his at all, which it isn't, right? It's fully Snyder and it, whatever. But are you gonna look at it? Because
I'm looking at Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Because I saw his name on it. I thought that was crazy.
Yes, he was. He was an executive producer on him and his wife were an executive producer on Justice League.
That's so weird because I thought that they didn't like each other in sort of like in not a personal way, but sort of like in a professional way, because when I remember when they were like, "Hey, sorry, my cat's being terrible. Hey, quit it. Sorry." But I remember when the Man of Steel was being shot in Chicago, Nolan said, "Well, then I'm not shooting the third Batman in Chicago. We're going to shoot it somewhere else." And I was like, "Why? Just shoot it in Chicago. Who cares? Keep it consistent, Nolan, and let's finish out in Chicago." Uh, because it
Really?
does,
I
it
didn't know
feels
that.
different in the Dark Knight Rises. It feels different because it's shot in a different place. Um,
Really? It wasn't shot?
yeah,
Because, yeah, I know The Dark Knight was shot in Chicago, but
I think both were.
Rises wasn't shot in Chicago?
No, no, and so that's why I kind of thought
That's.
that they were sort of like professional frenemies.
I mean, they may be. They may be. I distinctly remember reading somewhere that Warner asked him to oversee.
Interesting. It didn't work. Whatever.
Well, I'm sure because he probably was like, I don't care. Like, I feel like Chris is very much the type of guy who's like, that's that director's stuff. I don't care.
Right.
Let him deal with it.
Well, and okay, so we can transition now to things that have happened after The Dark Knight came out and in what it's done. Most of this is going to be about Heath Ledger and the Joker, okay?
Okay.
It's made the job of acting as the Joker very mysterious, right? We've talked about that a little bit already. That's one of its impacts and one of the things that the Dark Knight started, right? The other
Right.
thing is people saying that Heath Ledger gave one of the best performances of all time. That's fair, right? It's
Absolutely.
fair, but it's annoying. It's cliche because it's true, but it does get obnoxious after a while because it's sort of like, yes, I understand that that's true. He did give an amazing performance. One of only 2 or 3 posthumous Oscars given out at the Academy Awards. One of the only times that a comic book movie got an Oscar, right? I think Angela Bassett won another for Black Panther.
No, she lost to Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, did she?
She
Okay.
was nominated. She was nominated for Black Panther, but yeah, no, she ultimately lost to Jamie Lee Curtis.
Well, there you go. Which again, the performance and what Heath Ledger was doing is undeniable, and it really is very good. Taking aspects from like Hyenas and Alex Larange from A Clockwork Orange, and taking little ticks and mannerisms and body language from like people in mental facilities, or from Tom Waits as in an interview he did once. That all of that, when you put it all together, you can really tell it's his influences, and he just nailed it. But again, that's one of those things that I both agree with, but also don't want to hear about anymore. Which is crazy because we just spent an hour and a half doing that, right? Singing his praises. Another thing is people getting Heath Ledger Joker tattoos. That's got to be over by now, right? But I don't think it is.
I don't think so.
I think if 14-year-old me would have gotten his way, would have gotten a Heath Ledger Joker tattoo when the movie came out. Thank God there's age restrictions on tattoos.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that is so surprising to me is 2 different actors, Heath being one, both got an Oscar for portraying the Joker. I'm of course referring to Joaquin and his performance of
You're
the
right.
Joker and Todd Phillips' Joker.
You're absolutely
right. And that's another case of an actor going full method for the role. But see, even though I really enjoyed Joker, and it's probably somewhere over my shoulder, yeah, it's right there.
Mine's back here somewhere.
Joaquin didn't. Now, before I say this, it is a different version of the Joker. We're not seeing a carbon copy of what we saw in this movie, The Dark Knight. But I don't think Joaquin really reinvented the wheel like Heath did.
Yeah.
Heath set essentially the new standard of how really to portray a villain.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Now, granted, there have been a lot of great villains in comic book movies and otherwise. You know, Josh Brolin, I think Thanos in Infinity War is fantastic. Thanos in Endgame, not so much. But Thanos in Infinity War, insane. But still not on the same level as what Heath did. Now, like we mentioned with Jared, I think Jared kind of psyched himself out. Now, you may get mad at me for what I'm about to say, and I know if there's any people out there who just hate Jared Leto, they're not going to like this statement either. Especially because I just talked about the movie, but in Zack Snyder's Justice League, I felt like if Jared had performed the Joker like that, people would have been more okay with it. It still wouldn't have.
I agree 100% with that. What's the best part of that long ass movie anyway?
It's a 4-hour movie. I told my 18-year-old part-timer at work to watch that, and he was like, "It's 4 hours." I was like, "Yeah, but it doesn't feel like 4 hours."
Oh, I fast forwarded through it, so it wasn't 4 hours.
And he was like, "Rain, I'm not going to watch it." I was like, "That's fine." But now I don't know who necessarily to blame for the version of Joker in Suicide Squad. Like, I don't know if it's David Ayer's fault or who. But I feel like if Jared was able to play the Joker like he did in Snyder Cut, I feel like people would have a little bit more appreciation. Now, again, I still think we'd be having this discussion of, well, Heath is still the better Joker, but I think that people would have been more okay with Jared being the next Joker had that been the version we saw in Suicide Squad.
I agree. I remember initially I liked it because it was different. Leto's. I thought he was way crazier. I gotta be honest, I liked the idea of the tattoos. That was cool. I was like, okay, so it's gonna be super different, you know. The behind the scenes stuff was cringe, as the kids would say. You know, he was acting erratic and, you know, sending these weird gifts to people, and it was super bizarre and weird. The longer it's been, the less I like it. The more I'm like, the tattoos are stupid. He's way too crazy. That's another thing, you know.
Well, and we're gonna get off of this after this, but
sure.
The other thing is, again, like what we were talking about with like all the mystery surrounding Heath Ledger, there is all this other like subplot from what I heard that was supposed to be included to explain why this version of the Joker is the way he is, that never got explored. Like supposedly the Batman lost control and knocked his teeth out. That's why he's got gold teeth.
Yeah.
There's supposedly the reason why he has damage tattooed on his forehead is because it's supposed to be like to Batman, like, you damaged me. But I'm like, even if all of that had been put in, I still don't think it would have helped.
I agree, because what they're implying with the tattoos is that they're this sort of um, erratic behavior, but you have to sit there for hours to get those. So it's like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So
Well, and that's why, and
yeah,
again, we'll move on from this, but that's why I'm so glad when James Gunn did The Suicide Squad and he brought back Margot Robbie, he got rid of some of the stupider tattoos that she had in the first Suicide, like her stupid jaw tattoo that said rotten.
oh
He got rid of that. And
yeah,
even Margot was like, I want to get rid of this. And James was like, don't worry. I hate it too.
yeah. But again, this all does make sense in the context of Heath Ledger's Joker, because it's manufactured mystery, right? It's manufactured. Um, I don't know, like it's all manufactured. What Leto is doing, like he's doing that all to himself. This isn't like it's not as cool as and mysterious. It just doesn't need to be, right? I think I forgot who
Right.
he was talking to, but someone was doing all of this method acting, and Peter O'Toole is in the movie. And Peter O'Toole went up to this person. He goes, "Buddy, have you just tried acting? You know, that's what we're here. That's what we're doing. You know, it doesn't have to be legit. Like you're not having to break your arm for this scene where you break your arm. It's fine. You can just pretend for a minute. You know."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what, man? Getting off of Jared Leto's Joker, but
Sure.
no, for real. But I think even with the fact that Heath pretty much, for the sake of argument, went full method, it's still a performance that we're talking about. You know, I mean, pretty much the majority of this episode has just been about what he did for this
I know.
movie.
I know. But it works in this way. But again, I think the media and like these the telephone tree went around and made it seem like it's because of the role, and that's just not true. I don't think. I think that in and of itself is also manufactured. I think that what he did was just, I need to lock myself away. I need to really get this down. I think this version of the Joker needs to be this way. And for me to be this way, I need to sort of, you know, be in my own space for a while and really get this stuff down. Right.
Yeah, because I think he passed away from a he died from essentially an accidental overdose.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think that's another reason why people attribute it to the role,
Mm-hmm.
because I believe he was taking sleeping pills
I think you're right.
during this time. And yeah, so it wasn't like it's almost, no, I'm not going to say that because that's going to make me seem like an asshole, but also two, make me seem kind of heartless. I'm not going to even say it, but yeah, you're right that the media heard that he OD'd. The Dark Knight had just come out, so it was like, oh, the role killed him, because no one went and saw the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. So, it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, are you ready to wrap up?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've exhausted this enough. Again, the movie's amazing. The movie's phenomenal. It stands the test of time. It will always be good.
I agree. I don't think we're ever gonna hear someone say like, oh, this aged poorly. I disagree. I think it has aged better.
Yeah. And I think over time, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good for a comic book movie, right? Nor are people going to be like, wow, it's a comic book movie and it's really good. I think it's just going to, comic book movies are going to evolve always, just like this one did. This one was just the first to be super, super good and really different and subvert the expectations of. Sorry, if you can hear that, it's okay. My wife is making a grilled cheese.
Well, to piggyback on that point, Christopher Nolan did indirectly set a really high standard for what DC movies also could be.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's trend setting. It's setting a high standard. It's here's the goal.
Because let me see here.
Can you match it? Right. It's what you said earlier. It's just setting a new standard.
Yeah, because let me see. Ooh, the closest DC movie, in terms of, I'm going to go off the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, not the critic score.
Okay.
The closest one was Wonder Woman.
Really?
The Dark Knight is 94%, and Wonder Woman is 83%. Now, if you want to look at the critic score, it's 94 still for The Dark Knight, 93 for Wonder Woman.
So what you're saying is not even the other movies in the trilogy are that high?
I think Batman Begins is
a little bit lower. For sure should be over Wonder Woman. Like, I don't even know what we're talking about here.
Yeah, Batman Begins. Batman Begins is an 85 critically, 94 for audiences.
Okay.
And then The Dark, and I think that's because of what you said. It does a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And introduces us to this world.
Yeah.
And then Rises critically is 87 and audience score 90.
Okay.
So The Dark Knight is the peak of this trilogy.
Well, yeah, I mean, we knew that. But I'm just surprised that Wonder Woman is that high, because I liked Wonder Woman, but there's nowhere near as good as the three of these.
No.
So,
the point I was just making is that no DC movie has come close.
Right.
Chris kind of set them up for failure.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, you would think that people can just do it like that,
Yeah.
But people have a hard time, I guess.
Well, and actually, hang on. I may prove my own theory wrong. Hang on there. Give me 1 second. 1 second. Because I just mentioned it. Ooh, the Suicide Squad, James Gunn's version, is up there.
Okay.
90% critically, 82% audience. So it's...
Honestly, I would even go as far as to say that Matt Reeves is the Batman.
Oh, shit. Yeah, hang on.
Should be Wonder Woman also.
Yeah. Hang on.
No offense to Gal Gadot or whatever, or
Well, so the Batman, critically 85, audience 87.
Interesting. Okay.
So
lower than I thought.
So to wrap up my point, is post The Dark Knight, there have been high points within the DC films.
Yeah.
But no one's touching it.
No.
Maybe James's new universe will get there.
I kindly doubt it, but maybe. I just don't. I don't know. Like, maybe. I think people now are just obsessed with, because this is before, right? We're talking before cinematic universes, right? Before that was a big deal.
Yeah.
Because where they did exist, yes, I understand, but this is, I mean, Iron Man came out in the Dark Knight, right? So Iron Man, we're testing the waters with the MCU right now. Like, what James Gunn is trying to do with this new stuff is just, let's connect them all again. And it's like, I think people are kind of sick of that. So, at least I am. I'm tired of them all connecting. Who cares?
I think that's why I'm glad that he said that Matt Reeves' Batman is going to exist outside of this. I'm like, good, because it needs to.
Yeah, leave it alone.
Just let it be a sequel, like exactly like Chris Nolan's trilogy. Because apparently Matt Reeves confirmed that he was doing a trilogy, which I'm like, perfect. This can exist in its own world, in its own universe, separate from the rest of the DC.
Yeah.
Just like Chris Nolan's.
All right. I mean, that's cool, you know? Yeah, you got to leave that alone, because I really liked it.
Yeah.
We
went and saw it in theaters as a special fan event, so we saw it 2 days earlier.
Yeah, it was really rad.
And then
it was so good.
And then I turned around and saw it with Ashley on release day. For sure, another future episode.
I agree.
I'd love to dissect the Batman. I mean, we've already done Michael Keaton's. We're doing this one.
Yeah, might as well.
I mean, it's only fair.
I guess we're gonna skip. We're gonna skip Batfleck, and I guess that's okay.
Well,
it's okay with me. I don't give a shit.
He never got a chance to stand on his own, but you know what? It's all good.
Yeah,
it's all good.
I agree.
I mean, I know, unpopular opinion, I like Ben Affleck's Batman, but unfortunately his was written to be a part of the Justice League, so he was never going to get a chance to stand on his own.
Right.
So, but anyway, so buddy, what are we talking about next week? Which I know we're still trying to figure everything out.
Well, I'm gonna, preface this with it may change.
Okay.
But so for right now, given our special guests can join us, we are going to discuss the 2013 Stephen Knight film starring Tom Hardy, Locke. And it's going to be really interesting because it gives me a chance to speak on the erratic career trajectory of Stephen Knight. I don't know if you know anything about him or what he's done, but it really is up and down. Like, he will make some of the greatest things I've ever seen and then do Serenity. You know what I mean? And it's like, what are we doing here? Come on, Mr. Knight. You can do better than that. I know you can, because you've done Peaky Blinders. You know what I mean? Like, you can... he has made some of the greatest things that I've seen. One of them, of course, Peaky Blinders. He helped create Taboo with Tom Hardy. He's done Locke. He's done a bunch of stuff, and it's really good. A lot of it is really good, and then some of it is really bad. So that's...
yeah, he produced Spencer, which I really wanted to see.
Oh, Spencer's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about him producing stuff that, that must be up and down also. But the stuff that he's written can be either really good or really bad.
Well, he produced that stupid fucking adaptation of Seventh Son with Jeff Bridges, Ben Barnes, and Julianne Moore. You're not missing anything. I didn't see it either, but I saw the trailer and I was like, no.
Yeah, but anyway, so that's exciting. And if that doesn't happen, I do have a backup. So if we are unable to do Locke, we will do the other one. And the other one is a surprise. So.
Cool. Well, I hope we are able to do Locke.
Me too. It's awesome.
Love to get our guest's opinion, but I mean, you know what? It's all good if we have to pivot. Those they have lives of their own, so
I know. They sure do. So yeah.
But yeah, man. I guess we'll confirm that up, and then we'll be good. But if not, it's
completely fine.
NBD, no big deal. All right, everyone. Well, we hoped you enjoyed this sort of break from format with The Dark Knight, and we will potentially see you next week for Locke.